Welcome to NTD News. I'm Kevin Hogan. Here are today's top stories. Biden visited Georgia on his 100th day in office to build momentum for his newest spending plans, while Trump supporters lined the sidewalks in protest. The U.S. Supreme Court sides with an illegal immigrant over the deportation process. What could it mean for immigration enforcement? Rudy Giuliani accuses the Justice Department of dictatorship tactics after they raided his residence, and his lawyer accuses the DOJ of a corrupt double standard. But what does former President Trump have to say about Giuliani? New Jersey's governor is considering using COVID-19 relief funds to make direct payments to illegal aliens. A New Jersey assemblyman proposes a plan for the money to go to lawful New Jersey residents instead. President Biden celebrated his 100th day in Georgia, where two Democratic senators flipped the seats that helped Democrats solidify a slim majority in the Senate. NTD spoke to Georgians who went out to support Biden and those who went to show their disapproval with the new president.
Biden's speech focused on building up momentum for his new massive spending plans, nearly $4 trillion for infrastructure and social welfare programs.
With real plans I outlined today, we have a real chance to deliver real equity across the board to everyone.
Supporters approve of Biden's efforts so far and want him to keep forging ahead with his goals.
I expect him to stick to his plan and with his administration, and I expect him to go ahead and move forward diligently like he is doing.
Well, I'm looking forward to him getting support for some of his initiatives. For example, like helping with infrastructure, also with schools, also with, stimulating the economy so that we could once again be the America that we once were.
But others say not so fast. Even 100 days into Biden's presidency, there are still Trump supporters lining the sidewalks, eager to speak out about why they disapprove of Biden's plans for America.
They're trying to shove socialism down our throats. We have children at the border that makes you it tears at your heart. The border policies are horrible. The elimination of jobs are horrible. The infrastructure budget that they're introducing has nothing to do with our physical infrastructure.
She says she wants to urge Biden to turn away from the socialist agenda and do better.
Just speak the truth. God will protect those who speak the truth.
One of Georgia's Democrat Senate seats will be up for grabs again soon.
So, if you ever wonder if elections make a difference, just remember what you did here in Georgia when you elected Ossoff and Warnock. You began to change the environment.
Senator Raphael Warnock will face the voters again in 2022. No Republicans have officially announced their run for that seat yet. Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
A new Supreme Court ruling may make it more difficult to deport some illegal immigrants. The High Court sided with a Guatemalan national in a dispute over the deportation process.
The Supreme Court has sided with an illegal immigrant who argued he shouldn't be deported because his official paperwork was incomplete. The Guatemalan national has misdemeanors for driving without a license. He entered the United States in 2005 and now has 3 young children who are all U.S. citizens. To avoid breaking up families, officials can cancel deportation if an immigrant has lived in the U.S. for 10 years. But there's a catch. The government can stop the clock by sending a notice to appear. The ruling comes down to the word A. The immigrant argued that the government must serve one specific document with all the information instead of multiple documents. Conservative judges were evenly split in the 6-3 vote. Justice Neil Gorsuch said, "At one level, today's dispute may seem semantic, focused on a single word, a small one at that, but words are how the law constrains power." Justice Brett Kavanaugh disagreed, saying the man did receive all the required information. He said this interpretation spawns a litany of absurdities that will impose substantial costs and burdens on the immigration system. And the Department of Justice is ending Trump-era limits on grants to sanctuary cities. The 2017 policy had cut off hundreds of millions of dollars in funding to cities that didn't fully cooperate with U.S. immigration officers. Former Attorney General Jeff Sessions had said government funding was contingent on allowing authorities to ask about the immigration status of people in jail. States and cities have criticized the latest move. But the Biden administration told the Supreme Court to dismiss any pending cases concerning sanctuary cities.
Rudy Giuliani is accusing the Justice Department of using dictatorship tactics. That's after federal investigators executed search warrants to enter his home on Wednesday. Giuliani says the DOJ is ignoring potentially incriminating evidence of Hunter Biden for the same thing Giuliani is suspected of. Take a look.
Former Trump lawyer Rudy Giuliani spoke to Fox News' Tucker Carlson about the DOJ raid of his apartment. He said the warrant they used was illegal, and he denied failing to register as a foreign agent, which was part of the reason for the raid.
No, they come and said it's in my apartment when I'm willing to talk to them civilly myself. And second, I can tell you, I never ever represented a foreign national. In fact, I have in my contracts a refusal to do it because from the time I got out of being mayor, I didn't want to lobby.
The prosecutors are investigating alleged money laundering, wire fraud, campaign finance violations, and other infringements. This is an escalation into their investigation of his Ukraine business dealings. Giuliani says that by seizing his records when he was still Trump's lawyer, the DOJ was engaging in political prosecutions.
We might as well be in, East Berlin before the wall fell. This is tactics only known in a dictatorship where you seize a lawyer's records right in the middle of his representation of his client.
Giuliani's attorney accused the DOJ of a corrupt double standard when they executed the search warrant. That's because they say there may be clear evidence on a laptop purportedly belonging to Hunter Biden that would support similar allegations. Giuliani told Carlson he offered FBI agents Hunter Biden's laptop during the raid, but they wouldn't take it. His attorney, Bob Costello, confirmed that the federal investigators on Wednesday seized Giuliani's electronic devices. Costello says Giuliani's devices have material that is confidential between the attorney and his client. He said their seizure was a disturbing example of complete disregard for his protection. The DOJ nor the FBI immediately responded to a request for comment. Giuliani's son, Andrew Giuliani, is concerned about the seizure.
The fact that there's privileged material from a former president of the United States and his lawyer there, and they now have access on it, is very scary. And I think any American, whether you're red or blue, if you believe in the red, white, and blue, you should be really, really scared and afraid of what's going on here.
Former President Trump called Giuliani a great patriot.
Rudy Giuliani is a great patriot. He does these things. He just loves this country. And they raid his apartment. It's like so unfair and such a it's like a double standard.
The family of Air Force veteran Ashley Babbitt is planning to sue the Capitol Police Department. She was the only person shot during the January 6th breach of the Capitol. Babbitt's family lawyer tells Zenger News they plan to sue both the Capitol Police and the officer for wrongful death, and they will seek $10 million in damages in federal court. Babbitt was shot and killed by an as-yet unnamed officer as she tried to enter the Speaker's lobby of the Capitol building. She was unarmed and was shot while trying to climb through a broken window. The lawsuit comes after the Justice Department decided not to file criminal charges against the officer who killed Babbitt. A New Jersey assemblyman says COVID-19 relief funds shouldn't be diverted to illegal immigrants in the state. He says the money should be used for lawful New Jersey residents struggling because of the pandemic. New Jersey Assemblyman Jerry Scharfenberger proposes spending $40 million to help New Jersey homeowners pay their property taxes. The money would come from the state's share of the COVID-19 relief funds. That's in contrast to New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy's plan. He's proposing spending $40 million to make direct stimulus payments to illegal immigrants. Scharfenberger notes that New Jersey has the highest property tax rate in the country, and some residents can't pay the bill when they're out of work or when their renters aren't paying rent due to the pandemic. Scharfenberger tells the Epoch Times, if we have $40 million to give, literally give, to people who aren't supposed to be in the country in the first place, then certainly we could use that money. He says he has compassion for the immigrants, saying, in fairness to people who are here illegally, your heart has to go out to them. But still, we're a country of laws, and either we are a country of laws or we're not. He says that if we enforce some laws and overlook others, we'll be left with anarchy. Florida's Republican-controlled Senate passes a new bill that places several restrictions around vote by mail and ballot drop boxes. The bill is now headed to Governor Ron DeSantis. The bill would require signature verification for voters, and access to drop boxes would be limited to early voting hours unless they are located at election supervisors' offices. Drop boxes would also have to be monitored in person by an elections official, and ID would be required when dropping off ballots. The bill was amended from a previous stricter version that banned drop boxes completely. Governor DeSantis has expressed support for stronger election integrity protections and unprecedented election transparency for Florida residents. Democrats responded by calling it a Georgia-style voter suppression bill. 23-year-old Dylan Shakespeare Robinson was fined $12 million for trying to set a fire to a Minneapolis Police Department building during last year's protests and riots. He will also serve 4 years in prison and 2 years of supervised release. The sentencing comes after Robinson's guilty plea in December to 1 count of conspiracy to commit arson. Robinson's lawyer says his client is being singled out unfairly. He told the New York Times that Robinson is bearing the sentence for the other 1,000 people who participated. A federal criminal complaint accused Robinson of lighting a Molotov cocktail that another person tossed at a police building on May 28th. 3 other people have pleaded guilty in federal court for their roles in the arson incident. The crime rate is spiking across major cities in the U.S., and now on top of that, police forces are having trouble keeping their numbers up. NTD's Christina Kim speaks to a former Navy officer about why he thinks this is happening.
Police nationwide are dealing with a staffing shortage. The Seattle Police Department says since 2020, more than 200 officers left their jobs, citing an anti-police climate there. Seattle Police Chief Adrian Diaz said they're at record lows in the city, and he says budget cuts also played a role. City Council is considering cutting $5.4 million from the budget. Almost 190 cops in Louisville, Kentucky also left, choosing to retire or resign altogether. This as the Justice Department investigates Louisville police after the death of Breonna Taylor. And Philadelphia is facing similar issues. They're having trouble finding recruits, and droves of officers are retiring. Lieutenant Stephen Rogers says if this continues, there won't be any cops left to enforce the law.
There is a war against the police in this country, and that war is being executed by the Democrat Party that has embraced a socialist communist agenda.
In addition to anti-police sentiment, Lieutenant Rogers says other recent reforms also don't allow police officers to do their jobs. He says the attack against local law enforcement introduces the potential for a national police force.
What we see happening now, you've seen in communist countries all over the country, all over the world. The fact of the matter is the government wants control of everything, including law enforcement. They're going down a dangerous road.
He points to an increased use of the National Guards this year, which he says shows how the police force is being centralized. For example, the National Guard was in D.C. for 3 months after the inauguration, sparking frustration among the people and the troops. Rogers says the issue with policing isn't systemic racism, but an over-politicization, and he believes the gap between the police and the people isn't as big as it's portrayed to be.
Systemic politicization of the entire system. Everything's political now. Everything is racial now. But that's not coming from the people in the community or the police. It's coming from the politicians, both sides, Republican and Democrat.
Rogers says people need to educate themselves on what's going on and elect politicians who will serve the people, not their own political agenda. He urges Americans to have faith that things will turn around. Christina Kim, NTD News.
A former NYPD commissioner comments on the country's law enforcement and President Biden's plan to reform it. NTD's Don Tran has the details.
In an interview on The Nation Speaks, former NYPD Commissioner Bernardrick shared his thoughts on issues related to law enforcement. He said we are facing a problem of increasing crime, and it's not helped by calls for police reform. President Biden said in his address that improving relations between people and law enforcement requires rooting out systemic racism. But Carrick says there's no proof of systemic racism.
When you look at statistics, for example, unarmed black males versus white males being shot and killed, there are far more whites, almost half more whites killed than blacks. The chances of you being shot and killed in the United States as an unarmed black male, is like 0.00018. That is far from systemic.
Activist groups and politicians propose defunding the police, and some have said to abolish police altogether. Carrick said these solutions didn't work when used.
Just keep this in mind. Minneapolis called for the defunding of police. They defunded. They laid a lot of people off. A lot of people resigned. A lot of people retired. And within 3 months after they defunded, they had to reinstate, and they had to reinstate the budget, and they had to hire, beg, and plead people to come back to work because the crime rate was so out of control that they couldn't handle it. You know, these incidents that we see today, every single one of those incidents, the one thing that comes out of these is that, you know, training instructors in the police world say there had to be a training issue. There should have been more training. More training? We're defunding the budgets. You're not going to have that training. You're not going to have the resources you need. You're not going to have the manpower you need.
One path Carrick thinks the country could take is to change the leadership in major U.S. cities, which he said allowed for violent crime to increase. Don Tran, NTD News.
Ted Cruz will stop accepting campaign contributions from corporations that fight against conservative values. He encourages other members of Congress to do the same. He cites the recent corporate boycotts of Georgia's election law. He says corporations like Coca-Cola and Major League Baseball don't know what's in the law and are just trying to gain points for wokeness. In a Wall Street Journal opinion article, Cruz says he has received $2.6 million from corporate political action committees over the course of his Senate career. He says he won't take a penny more and that corporations should not expect the support of conservative politicians for tax breaks and such when they take stances against conservative values. Former President Trump is dropping hints about a potential third presidential run. This time, he shares who he'd consider as his running mate for 2024.
Former President Donald Trump says he would consider Florida Governor Ron DeSantis as a potential running mate if he runs in 2024. Speaking with Fox Business on Thursday, Trump praised the Florida governor and expressed how much his base loves the idea of a Trump-DeSantis ticket, saying, "He's done a great job as governor. I'm saying what I read and what you read. They love that ticket. Certainly Ron would be considered. He's a great guy." If Trump doesn't run, DeSantis is considered a potential GOP frontrunner for 2024. This is largely due to his handling of the pandemic, especially unapologetically lifting virus-related restrictions to keep his state open. On Wednesday, Trump revealed that if he does run in 2024, he won't officially announce it until after the 2022 elections. In an interview on the Dan Bongino show, Trump said, "I think probably the most appropriate time would be right after the 22 election. That's my opinion. I could do it sooner, but I think right after the election would be good, especially if you have a good election." He added he thinks the 2022 election will be great for Republicans. Republicans are hoping to flip both the House and the Senate, and Trump has made clear he plans to play a key role in endorsing and campaigning for candidates.
Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell tells Fox 3 or 4 current GOP members of the Senate will run for president in 2024. He says he will support whoever gets the nomination. Now to Afghanistan. The U.S. military withdrawal there is now formally underway. U.S. aircraft have moved fewer than 100 troops and military equipment so far. Defense officials say contractors and government workers are also departing the country, though the Pentagon has said it's concerned about attacks from the Taliban as personnel depart. It's sending 650 ground troops into Afghanistan as a covering force. The process is due to be completed by September 11th. NATO troops have also started leaving the country. NATO allies similarly announced their withdrawal coinciding with President Biden's plans. Up next, students in New Jersey are returning to the classroom for in-person learning. Parents and teachers share their thoughts as kids make the transition. That and more here on NTD News. The New York governor's nursing home scandal isn't going away yet. The governor is responding to the scandal once again following a New York Times report. NTD's Allison Lee has the latest.
New York Governor Andrew Cuomo Thursday defends himself against new allegations relating to the nursing home scandal, saying his office wanted to ensure accuracy.
Our number one concern, especially in this superheated political environment, was whatever number we put out had to be accurate, because it was being criticized by both sides.
The New York Times on Wednesday alleged Cuomo's top aides repeatedly delayed state health officials from releasing nursing home death data over a span of at least 5 months. The outlet says 3 anonymous sources familiar with the matter told the paper Cuomo's top aide Melissa DeRosa called for an audit of the state health department's nursing home investigation last August. Cuomo says this is because the Department of Justice under Trump was investigating the matter. He blames Trump for politicizing the pandemic and creating conflicts between the federal government and Democrat states.
They started an investigation. You know what the lawyers say when an investigation starts from the Department of Justice? Be careful. Be careful, because now whatever you say, they can use against you.
The anonymous sources also allege that Cuomo's senior advisors rewrote the health department's report on nursing home deaths multiple times. The final report has a lower death toll than the draft. The final report also claims that Cuomo's policy of readmitting infected patients into nursing homes was not the driving force behind deaths there. DeRosa allegedly wrote an email to health officials and Cuomo aides last June saying, "We are getting anxious over here on this report." The New York Attorney General report from January this year concludes that nursing home deaths appear to be underreported by around 50%. According to the New York Times, Cuomo's aides knew about this since last spring. Allison Lee, NTD News.
New York City's mayor says it's time to get back to normal. The city is set to fully reopen this summer after more than a year of lockdowns, social distancing, and masking. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the story.
New York City plans to fully reopen on July 1st. The move comes after more than a year of pandemic-induced closures and capacity limits. Mayor Bill de Blasio announced the plan on Thursday. New Yorkers reacted to the news after following strict measures for over a year.
It could work, but you just got to see what can happen. That's all. You just got to see. We can go by what they say, but we got to see it on our own with our own eyes. And I think it might be safer, but you just don't know yet. So I'm taking it ear by ear. That's all.
After a slow rollout, a large percentage of the city's 8 million residents have been vaccinated. The mayor said 6.3 million doses of vaccine have been administered.
It means that we're getting back in track, that everything's going back to normal. It feels good to finally be over with this coronavirus thing that took a lot of people's life away. And I feel good. I'm happy.
But the city's economy has a long way to go.
New York has a tremendous problem. It has to come back from a devastating loss of workers and income. And right now, it is not a very good situation. But hopefully, as the economy continues to surge, that New York will return.
The mayor said his optimism on the city's long-awaited return to normal reflected the success of the push to get New Yorkers vaccinated. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
Virus case numbers are down in New Jersey. The governor is starting to open the state, and now more schools are opening up or expanding in-person learning.
Students in Jersey City began returning to school on Thursday. Many say they're happy to be back.
First day back with the kids. I am feeling super excited. Can't wait to have them in the classroom. They're excited. I'm happy for them.
One parent says she's nervous about how her child will adjust to being back in school.
Mainly, though, it's anxiety of how he's going to acclimate again after so much time away, just because this is uncharted territory. But, I mean, they're kids, they're resilient. God willing, they'll be fine.
Elementary school principal Frank Barotto says it's hard to assess students when they're learning remotely.
Basically, we don't get a true sense of what the child's capabilities are.
Barotto says some students may have fallen behind, and it will be a big challenge to find out what level the students are really on and teach them accordingly.
They could be in 4th grade or 3rd grade, but are they really in those grades?
New Jersey's virus cases are down 28% in the past 2 weeks. The state's governor, Phil Murphy, says nearly 86% of students in the state are back in person in some format. He announced that proms, weddings, and other events can resume starting May 10th. Murphy says schools in New Jersey should be entirely in person by the fall.
The FDA is proposing a ban on menthol cigarettes and flavored cigars. It's a long-awaited win for anti-smoking and civil rights groups and could ease a huge share of sales for the big tobacco.
The U.S. Food and Drug Administration on Thursday proposed a ban on menthol cigarettes and flavored cigars in the United States. A win for anti-tobacco and civil rights groups, but a move that could erase a huge chunk of sales for cigarette manufacturers. For decades, anti-smoking groups have sounded the alarm on menthol cigarettes, arguing they contribute to disproportionate health burdens on black communities and play a major role in luring young people into smoking. The FDA was forced to act by Thursday, a court-imposed deadline, to respond to a citizen's petition from 2013 seeking a ban on menthol cigarettes. The ban, however, is likely to take years to implement with looming legal challenges from the tobacco industry. Altria Group and Reynolds American, a unit of British American Tobacco, said they would evaluate the latest proposal, but stated that the published science on the matter does not support regulating or banning menthol cigarettes. Imperial's U.S. business, ITG Brands, said the announcement was disappointing but not unexpected. Menthol cigarettes, already banned in many U.S. states including California and Massachusetts, still account for more than a third of the industry's overall market share, even as smoking rates have declined. Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids said Thursday the FDA's latest move could be the strongest action that the United States has ever taken to drive down the number of kids who start smoking.
Just ahead, the innovation sector of California has plans for more expansion in the community. This comes as Silicon Valley's sales are up in the first quarter. There's a national boba shortage, but it's not affecting this California cafe that makes its own bubble tea in-house. All that and more in just a minute.
If you're like me, and I think it's actually most of us, then you're getting really fed up with the nonsense going on inside the banking system. I mean, we've worked hard our entire lives to retire comfortably. We just recovered from the crash of 2008, and it seems like it's about to happen all over again. Look at the too-big-to-fail banks. They're only getting bigger as the Fed hands them trillions of dollars daily, while simple folks like you and me, we're only getting the short end of the stick. That's why I'm glad I found this book called The Bank Failure Survival Guide. Give us a call, and we'll send you a free copy with no obligations whatsoever. Just one American to another, telling you about some options that you might not have considered. Call 866-239-2619 today for your free copy of the Bank Failure Survival Guide. That's 866-239-2619.
%90 of news outlets in the United States are controlled by 6 corporations. They're not out to tell you the truth of what's happening. They're out to tell you the picture of the world that they represent. The mission of the Epoch Times is to chase the truth, to ground all statements in facts, and prevent people from being misled. This is a battle between truth and deceit. Subscribe today and join the Americans who are seeking truth and tradition. We'd love to have you on board.
Silicon Valley's profits are up, and the tech capital may be capitalizing on that. New plans are in the works to expand housing in the downtown area, and financial reports indicate that the state may remain as the home of tech giants. NTD's David Lamb has the details.
The city of San Jose is considering a new project called Downtown West to continue its tech dominance.
Partnering with Google and others to build some 7 million square feet of office and commercial space, 700,000 square feet of retail and restaurants and various amenities.
This project would provide 4,000 housing units and more public transportation.
It is an extraordinary opportunity to provide more housing that we critically need, to provide jobs opportunities that we critically need, and to provide a vibrant downtown that I think so many of our residents have long awaited in our city.
If approved, construction may start in 2023 and would be expected to be completed in 10 plus years. The housing plan comes as big tech giants such as Tesla, Facebook, and Apple reported revenue exceeding Wall Street expectations this month. Tesla's 10Q shows earnings of nearly $10.4 billion for this quarter, compared to last year's $68 million. Facebook beat market expectations with quarterly revenue of $26.2 billion, driven by a surge in ad revenue from businesses. Alphabet, Google's parent company, also reported record profits for the month. David Lamb, NTD News, California.
A California man is accused of setting a fire that became the state's 5th largest blaze, all to conceal a murder. Victor Serratino was already accused of killing Priscilla Castro back in August. Castro went missing after the two went out on a date. On Wednesday, the Solano County Sheriff announced 2 more murder charges and arson charges against Serratino. The sheriff says Serratino deliberately set the Markley fire to cover Castro's murder. 2 men died in that fire. The Markley fire merged with another blaze to become the LNU complex fire, which burned more than 360,000 acres. Serratino is expected in court Friday to face those additional charges. It's National Bubble Tea Day. For one small cafe in California, it's a chance to celebrate their unique homemade boba. NTD's Eileen Ng brings us more.
There's a nationwide boba shortage, but Alicia Zhao is unfazed. She's the co-owner of 360 Health Cafe near Monterey, California, where she makes her own tapioca pearls.
It's tapioca flour and water. It's filtered water and organic tapioca flour. Yeah, it's very simple ingredient, just 2 ingredients. And the sweetener we use is dark organic brown sugar.
Her goal is to make healthy bubble tea for people. The boba is organic, and the tea itself is from Taiwan. She credits her Taiwanese friend for teaching her how to make the pearls.
It was very tricky. The texture is the tapioca flour is so different from the regular flour. The texture has to be just right, otherwise you couldn't form the boba.
She makes the boba in a machine and stores it in the freezer. The next morning, she cooks it for half an hour. Zhao says some of her customers come back just for the boba. Another cafe, Boba Guys, also makes its own boba in their Bay Area factory, but they do import tapioca starch from Thailand. In an Instagram post, Boba Guys wrote, "Since we own our own factory, we are affected less, but shipping issues and port congestion will still make our inventory volatile. Cargo ships have been jamming Bay Area and Los Angeles ports for months. Consumer spending has increased, mostly due to online shopping, and has led to shipment delays." Eileen Ng, NTD News, California.
The largest airplane ever to take flight made its second voyage on Wednesday, soaring into clear skies over California's Mojave Desert. The massive carrier aircraft is made by American aerospace company Stratolaunch. The plane, nicknamed Rock, has a massive 385-foot wingspan and can climb to altitudes of 35,000 feet. It's designed to transport hypersonic vehicles and make it easier to access space. Rock's original focus was launching satellites and eventually humans into space, but now Stratolaunch says its priority is in the air launch of the company's other vehicles, like the Talon A. Rock's in-air launches mean weather-related delays and other ground takeoff limits can be avoided. Stratolaunch says it's also developing a reusable space plane called Black Ice. Still to come, the Federal Reserve Chair says Chinese digital yuan won't replace the dollar as the world's main reserve currency. He says China's system wouldn't work in the US or compete on the global stage. A Canadian lab gave deadly virus samples to Wuhan. The lab is under question since it failed to present documents relating to the virus transfer. Stay tuned to find out more. Hong Kong democracy activist Joshua Wong was among 4 people who pleaded guilty on Friday. They admitted to participating in an illegal assembly on June 4th last year to commemorate the 1989 crackdown on protesters in and around Beijing's Tiananmen Square.
4 Hong Kong democracy activists, including Joshua Wong, pleaded guilty on Friday for participating in an illegal assembly on June 4th last year. That assembly was meant to commemorate the deadly 1989 crackdown on protesters in Beijing's Tiananmen Square. While commemorations for that incident are banned in mainland China, Hong Kong traditionally holds an annual vigil, the biggest globally. Last year, however, marked the first time the vigil was banned on what police said were coronavirus restrictions on group gatherings. It's expected to face a similar ban this year. Joshua Wong is one of the pro-democracy movement's most prominent activists. He is already in prison after being found guilty of participating in organizing an unauthorized assembly during the mass protests of 2019. But while in prison, he was arrested in January on suspicion of breaking the national security law, which was implemented in July last year.
The Federal Reserve Chair says he isn't worried that China has a head start in the race for a government-issued digital currency. He says it's more important to do it right than do it fast, and that China's approach wouldn't work in the U.S. anyway.
Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell says China's digital yuan cannot replace the dollar as the world's main reserve currency.
And that's because of our rule of law, our democratic institutions, which are the best in the world, our economy, our industrious people, all the things that make the United States the United States.
Powell said Wednesday he's not concerned about countries like China that move fast in launching a digital currency. What he's really concerned about is getting it right. He also noted that China's digital currency wouldn't work in the United States.
The currency that's being used in China is not one that would work here. It's one that really allows the government to see every payment that's used for which it is used in real time.
Powell said he thinks the digital yuan has more to do with what's happening within China's own financial system and less to do with global competition.
The Canada-China Relations Committee is calling on the Public Health Agency of Canada and its lab to testify. This is after they failed to provide documents about a shipment of pathogens that the Canadian lab gave to China's Wuhan lab. NTD's Tiffany Meyer has more on the story.
A top Canadian health agency is facing questions on why its lab gave deadly virus samples to China's Wuhan virology lab. In 2019, Canada's National Microbiology Lab, or NML, gave samples of the Ebola and Hennepin viruses to the Wuhan lab for research. NML is the country's highest security level 4 lab. It works with some of the deadliest human and animal pathogens. The Canada-China Relations Committee is now calling on NML and the Public Health Agency of Canada to testify. This after they failed to provide documents about the transfer of the viruses. In a previous committee testimony, NML's acting vice president appears to admit that the transfer was made at the request of China's Wuhan lab. Hearing the admission, the committee was stunned.
But that's an astonishing admission. So you're taking a request from a nation that has a history of theft, lies, and accepting that, and data then is transferred based on the word of a government that is known to lie not only to its people but to the world community.
The president of Canada's Public Health Agency and MNL's vice president are set to appear before the Canada-China Relations Committee on May 10th. That's where they'll testify on why they haven't provided relevant documents. Communist China's foreign ministry is responding to Australia's military upgrades. They accuse some Australian politicians of being extremely irresponsible on Wednesday. The ministry spokesman labeled the Australian politicians troublemakers for what he called inciting confrontation. Australia is preparing itself for any potential military conflict amid escalating tensions with Communist China. Earlier on Wednesday, the Australian government said it will spend $580 million to upgrade its military bases. Prime Minister Scott Morrison says the move will enable the country to respond to tensions in the Asia-Pacific. Australia will spend $270 billion in the next decade to boost its long-range strike capabilities. The announcement comes after the Australian Home Affairs Secretary warned that the drums of war were beating in the region. Local media outlets believe his remarks were aimed at Beijing. Australia-China tensions rose following the start of the pandemic. Last April, Australia called for a global inquiry into the Chinese regime's handling of the outbreak. In retaliation, Beijing slapped heavy tariffs on key Australian goods, including coal, beef, wine, among others. But India seems to be very interested in buying Australian coal. Data provider Refinitiv says Australia has become the biggest coal supplier to India. Australia, Japan, and India are joining forces amid rising tension with Communist China. The three countries launched a plan to boost their supply chains on Tuesday. In a joint statement, the trio explained their supply chains had become vulnerable. Though the statement doesn't mention the Chinese regime, it seems they were referring to the world's second-largest economy. A number of countries have been depending on the Chinese regime for critical medical supplies during the pandemic. The New York Times reported that China had been producing half the world's surgical masks before the virus emerged in Wuhan. Since then, it's expanded manufacturing nearly 12-fold. On Wednesday, Beijing criticized the trio's plan as unrealistic. Australia, Japan, and India have at least one thing in common. Their relations with Communist China are getting worse. On Tuesday, Australia's Prime Minister said officials might review a major lease with a Chinese state-run company. The Chinese-owned Landbridge Group has leased Australia's Port of Darwin for years. The possible review aims to address rising security concerns and threats posed by Beijing. The same day, Japan expressed strong concerns over Beijing's military expansion in the South China Sea amid ongoing territorial disputes. In response, Chinese state-run media outlets accused Japan of what they called maliciously attacking and slandering China. Last June, Chinese and Indian soldiers engaged in hand-to-hand combat on mountain slopes along their shared border. The Indian military reported 20 deaths on their side following the scuffle.
Coming up, dozens die after a stampede breaks out at a religious festival in Israel. Witnesses say children are among the dead. 2 people are arrested.
Listen, you're my friend.
I noticed you haven't really been yourself recently.
Yeah, I feel like something's up.
How are you?
Are you okay?
Is there anything you want to talk about?
I just want to know how you're feeling.
And listen, even if you don't know what to say, I'm here to talk. No matter what you're going through, I just want you to know I'm here. I've got your back. When you want to talk, I'm here.
Kids will be kids, which just goes to say kids will be curious. They get into everything, everything. If there's a loaded firearm in the house, they could get their hands on that too. Keeping firearms locked, unloaded, and stored separately from ammunition in a place inaccessible to kids can help keep your loved ones safe from family fire. Safe gun storage saves lives.
The next story may shock viewers. We have some graphic content that may disturb you. Medics say dozens of people are dead after a stampede at a religious bonfire festival in Israel on Friday. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu calls it a heavy disaster.
Dozens were killed in a stampede at a religious festival in Israel on Friday in what Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called a heavy disaster. Tens of thousands of ultra-Orthodox Jews had gathered at the Mount Meron tomb for the annual Lag BaOmer commemorations, which include all-night prayer and dance. Ecstatic crowds congregated despite warnings from public health officials. Witnesses said they realized people had been trampled when an organizer appealed over a loudspeaker for the crowds to disperse. The National Emergency Medical Service said over 100 people had been injured, with dozens dead. Witnesses said some of the victims included children. Police said Thursday they had arrested 2 people for disrupting officers' efforts to keep order at the site. Videos on social media showed chaotic scenes as ultra-Orthodox men tried to push through walls of iron to escape the crush. Bodies lay on stretchers in a corridor covered in foil blankets. As paramedics clambered to reach the wounded, police shut down the site and ordered revelers out. Military helicopters took the wounded to hospitals. The tomb at Mount Meron is an annual pilgrimage site, one of the holiest sites in the Jewish world. Private bonfires at Mount Meron were banned last year due to public health restrictions. But lockdown measures were eased this year as a result of the country's rapid vaccination rollout.
The digital nomad trend is gaining popularity. That's as world habits and environment have seen a dramatic shift over the past year.
Is this cliffside office the ultimate in remote working? Jason Griffin is a call center consultant turned digital nomad. It's a term used to describe people who use technology to work from wherever there's connectivity. And the trend is becoming more popular as the ongoing health crisis continues to change our working habits.
Today we are pushing the technology to its limits because we're going over a cliff face and we're abseiling down to a ledge, and I will be working all day from that ledge and taking and making calls, interacting with internal staff while I sit there in this ledge on the side of a cliff, just showing that remote literally means remote.
Griffin says as long as he has a mobile connection and his laptop, he can do his job as good as, if not better, than if he were in a busy office. But even if you're not planning on dangling off the side of a cliff over the Irish Sea, you may find yourself being wooed by the idea of packing up and setting up camp in, say, a Greek island. Communications consultant Rowena Harding likes to take a walk by the sea before work, then opens up her laptop in the sun and starts her day.
My favorite thing about being a digital nomad on a Greek island is that I can get to the sea so quickly. I can walk here in 10 minutes even if I don't know what I want to do. If I'm really stressed out from something, I just go, take the rubbish out. And the rubbish bins are just over there, and it means I get to walk to the sea, and it just lifts my soul so much.
Soon, her working setup may not be uncommon. A survey from US-based Enterprise Technology Research predicts the percentage of workers globally permanently working from home is expected to double in 2021. In Britain, more employers say working from home is increasing the productivity of their staff, according to a survey by the Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development.
Hanging above lush greenery and yellow flowers, the world's longest pedestrian suspension bridge opened on Thursday in Portugal. Locals hope the attraction will help revive the region. Hugo Javier became one of the first the bridge alongside his equally jittery partner and tour guide. Nearly 1,700 feet long, the bridge is suspended between two mountains and almost 600 feet above the fast-flowing River Paiva. It's located in the UNESCO-recognized Arouca Geopark. The project costs $2.8 million and took around 2 years to build. The landscape around the bridge is calm, but the crossing is not for the faint-hearted. Held up by steel cables and two massive towers on each side, it wobbles a little with every step. Coming up, a group of giraffes is rescued from a sinking island in Kenya. Rangers and conservationists relocate the animals to a conservancy on the mainland. More on that in just a moment. A successful rescue mission comes to a close in Kenya. It saved a group of giraffes from a sinking island there. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the story.
A rescue mission is underway on Longacharo Island in Kenya's Rift Valley. The island is sinking amid rising water levels, threatening the lives of giraffes that live there. The giraffes were transported to Longacharo Island 10 years ago as part of a conservation project. Now, a group of 9 Rothschild giraffes is being airlifted to safety after flooding stranded them. They're headed to a new home at the Ruko Community Conservancy in Baringo on the mainland.
During the rainy season, we had heavy downpour in Longicharo, the giraffe's habitat. We had an increase in water levels, thus leading to decreased forage area, and we saw that this would have led to their starvation.
The mission started in December last year. It's a joint effort organized by the Kenya Wildlife Service, the Northern Rangelands Trust, Save Giraffes Now, and the Ruko Community Conservancy. In 2016, giraffes were added to the IUCN Red List of endangered species and classed as vulnerable. Kenya currently has a population of around 800 Rothschild giraffes. Their existence is mainly threatened by habitat loss, predation, and poaching.
There are a few Rothschild's giraffes in Kenya. Translocation of these giraffes will lead to an increase in populations, because they will have access to adequate forage and rangeland. Moreover, because they are called the Baringo giraffes, they will have occupied their original habitat.
Rangers at Ruko Conservancy say they're already seeing improvements in the health of the giraffes. Their population is expected to grow. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
The Netherlands is famous for its yearly tulip bloom, but for the second year in a row, visitors won't be allowed to visit the gorgeous tulip parks because of CCP virus restrictions. Keukenhof boasts over 100 stunning acres of picturesque flowers and is only open 8 weeks while the flowers bloom. The park's director says it's sad that visitors won't be allowed in this year again, especially because there is plenty of room for social distancing, and he believes they could create a safe atmosphere. Keukenhof normally attracts around 1.5 million visitors annually, rivaling the country's top museums. Now tourists will have to wait until at least next year to experience the park's stunning beauty. An afternoon nap isn't popular in American business culture yet, but down the road we might be taking a daily snooze.
Welcome to Strong Mind and Body. I'm Gina Marie. If there are any upsides to the COVID-19 pandemic, it's been our ability to take a daily siesta. Sleep can seem like a waste of time, especially when you are busy. But companies like Ben & Jerry's, Cisco, and others have actually adopted policies that encourage their employees to nap. Some offer nap rooms. Tech giants are providing weary workers with nap pods. Some come complete with a zero-gravity bed, soothing music, and a sleep-inducing light show. For those now working from home, this may be the perfect chance to experiment with an afternoon nap. If we do, we might find this apparent luxury transforms our afternoons. According to Jamie Grumman, a business professor and a senior research fellow in Canada, productivity and work quality can improve when we nap. Grumman says that research shows that naps can improve vigilance, math skills, and logical reasoning. Napping can also make people more alert and improve their reaction time. Nobody disputes our need for a nightly sleep, but for many people, sleeping during the day has an ugly stigma attached to it. It reeks of laziness and indulgence, an activity reserved exclusively for babies, the ill, and the elderly. But this stigma is found only in the modern Western world. If you take a look at many older cultures, you'll find that napping is actually a common practice, very much in line with the rhythm of a day. Even in Japan, a country known for its strong work ethic and company devotion, naps get social respect. In Japan, it is very common to see people snoozing in cafes, on the train, in shops, and even in the office. The practice is known as sleeping on duty. One way to conserve your energy is simply by taking a break. Going for a walk, listening to some music, or just taking a few moments to clear your head can all help give your mind a rest so that it can better handle the next few hours on the job. To get the most out of your nap though, you need to use this power strategically. Sleep for too long or too late in the afternoon and you may run the risk of insomnia and reduce the amount of sleep you get at night. The ideal nap takes place within our natural post-lunch energy dip, generally a 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. window. A 20-minute power nap to relieve drowsiness, or a 45-minute to 1 hour nap to fully restore cognitive function.
And that's all for now. Catch us again tonight at 6:30 Eastern. I'm Kevin Hogan.
Don't miss out on important news. Our videos are being deleted. So if you don't want to be cut off from honest news, take a moment to sign up for our newsletter at newsletter.ntd.com so you don't lose access to NTD. Go to newsletter.ntd.com to sign up for our evening newsletter.